Hello everybody, I hope you're doing fine wherever you are today. So this is Eugene Stories with another video. For the longest time, we've been seeing economic disparities between white people and black people, right? And black people have suffered so much to come up with strategies, to come up with ways to, come up with this problem because the system for the longest time was against them, and they used different economic ways to just make it. And that's what I'll always salute every person out there in the United States, especially American blacks who are trying to make both and meet. So the videos of today is something which is crazy, which is happening. And remember, as I usually say, it's easy to find a white person, a young teenager who has a lot of money that they have inherited from their parents or from their grandfather or whoever he might be related with. This is not the same case with black folks because their forefathers were left with nothing. Now today, what is called inflation is eating in the United States. White people are also being faced with this problem. Why? Because when the inflation rate increases, it means that the resources that they were left, if they are not put into production, it ends or its value reduces. So it needs to be working. And in that reason, black folks have been saying this for the longest time. And it's now happening. It's dawning to the white folks that the life is getting really hard for everyone, not just for black folks, even for white people. I want us to watch this video and then we're going to come back with a critical analysis about this video, because when black people say these things, people think that it's a joke. Now it's happening to the white folks and they can't literally handle it. They can't fathom what is really going on today in the United States, especially talking about the inflation. So let's watch this video, then come back, say something.
Can somebody explain to me in crayon eating terms why I make over 3 times the federal minimum wage and I cannot afford to live? And I do not want to hear the pull yourself up from your bootstraps, work 90 hours a week. That's not the goal, guys. That should not be our standard. I am so fucking tired of people being complacent with this uniparty, both of them fucking us over. When my parents were my age, they both made less than half of what I make and they lived alone. I cannot afford to live anywhere alone. A 1-bedroom apartment, $1,800. 2-bedroom apartment, $2,200. Who the fuck can afford that? It is embarrassing to come out and say that it is a struggle to survive right now, but I know so many people are struggling. And do not get me started on what my grandparents were doing. They $3,000 house. And yes, I understand inflation and all of the bullshit that they have been pulling with the Fed. Why are we allowing it? Why? And then I clock out of my shift. I am tired. I have to go home. And I check the news. Another 60 fucking billion to a country nobody can point out on a map. What are we doing? Where has the plot gone? We have lost it, folks. We have fucking lost it. The American dream is dead. It is over. Gone and forgotten.
Answered the question himself in his own video, but I want to highlight one thing he briefly mentioned and talk about it, which is that the American dream is dead. Yes, the traditional American dream, which is like doing better than your parents and being able to provide a lot for your family, is dead, or at least it's changed. Because there are many of us that are well aware that we will never be able to make as much money as our parents did. And I think my mother, who is a boomer and benefited directly from the system in place, said it best when she once said, roughly, that the American dream has changed. It's become very apparent to everyone that in this economy, Gen Z, millennials, and some Gen Xers, many of us will not be able to do better than our parents. We won't even be able to do as well as our parents. And now the American dream has become just being able to get by, being able to maybe afford a house at some point, maybe have a kid or two if we're lucky enough to make that much money. And a lot of us, myself included, who has now experienced company like financial related layoffs twice so far in the last 2 years since I've entered the job market. You know, those of us who feel like we're constantly in fight or flight about bills and how we're gonna keep making it by, it's making us miserable and feel so hopeless. And yes, I could sit here all day and show you graphs of how like inflation is going up, and while wages are going up, it's just not matching inflation. So it feels like we're all just constantly working and working, and the goalpost just keeps getting moved further and further away from us. And yeah, it has a lot of us extremely stressed and worried and feel like just giving up because we're constantly running a race where the finish line is getting moved further out. And I think it's obvious that we're all just really exhausted by it now. I know I am. I'm constantly hitting a wall with all of this. And a lot of us have to wake up every day blatantly knowing we will never do as well as our parents did, and we just have to try to make it, you know, somewhat close to that. I'm sorry, my dad passed away several years ago on this date, so I'm just thinking about him, and sometimes I feel like he'd be proud of me, but sometimes I feel like he'd be very disappointed. But he was also an extremely intelligent businessman with multiple degrees, so I think he, more than anyone, would really understand what we're all feeling right now.
Spot on. I mean, for a lot of us, the best chance we have at owning a house is waiting for a family member to pass away so that we can get some inheritance to be able to afford a down payment. This is the reality that no one talks about. And I think if you're waiting for someone's death so that you can live, then that's a nightmare, not a dream.
How are people affording life right now? How are people tackling this cost of living on the average American salary? I just watched a TikTok of a teacher who makes a teacher's salary. I don't know what state she's in, so I don't know how much she makes, but her 1-bedroom apartment is $2,000. And when she spends $2,000 on that 1-bedroom apartment, it doesn't even come with a washer and dryer. So she has to go pay an additional $2 every time she wants to use their washer and dryer. Okay, like, how does that leave her any extra money to spend? And then she said she had a $400 car payment, which some people were bashing her on that. But in today's economy with interest rates, that's really not that bad. And I'm sure she needs a dependable car. So you talk about teacher's salary, $2,000 in rent, $400 car payment. You got insurance, you got groceries, electricity. Like, I don't understand how people are affording life right now, and it really makes me sad for some people. You have people who are like her. She's single, she has her own salary, or families where it just works out best for them for the mother to stay home. And if the father is just making an average American salary, how are they affording life without going in a bunch of debt? This lady who's a teacher started crying because she said she realizes on her salary and where she lives, she will actually end up in more debt. Then, like, she will just continue to accrue more debt and more debt and more debt because her salary is not matching the cost of living. And what's sad is I've seen people be like, just spend less. Listen, guys, the cost of living is rising and our salaries are stagnant, okay? So there's not just spend less. That's not the problem here. The problem is the cost of living is outrageous, and minimum wage in some states is still $7.25. Teachers in some states are still paid a ridiculously low salary, even though their job is super important. I don't know what we can do about this, but I'm just going on a rant because it really, really pisses me off right now. How are people tackling this cost of living?
I really have no fucking clue how people afford this day and age with normal average jobs. And it's like, I was a server for almost 8 years and I never once made more than like 40 grand. And that was me making decent money. I was making $20 to $30 an hour. But it doesn't matter because the average cost to live in America is like 3 grand a month or something. And that times 12 is like almost 40 grand, you know? Maybe that was enough money to live off of 4 or 5, more like 20 fucking years ago. It's unfortunate, but it's just not enough money anymore. And it's like the video that I stitched. She was talking about how someone she knew was a teacher and how she didn't make enough money. My best friend is a teacher. She is so passionate. She is so knowledgeable about what she does. but she will never make the amount of money that she deserves, you know? She still lives with her fucking mom, and I don't blame her. I still live with my parents, even though I'm making really good money, because I know that the second that I move out, I'm gonna be throwing away quadruple the amount of money that I already am, because shit is just so damn expensive.
There is no more middle class. This has to do with the wealth disparity in America, which, if you want to make a political thing, you're more than welcome to make it a political. The 1% of America owns $47.44 trillion. The equivalency would be if I go to spend $1 at the Dollar Tree and I go, fuck it, it's $1. That's how they view $400,000. So we're supposed to go to college, right? And then we have to take a loan out for college, and then no one teaches you about interest rates, so that's fine. So we're stuck paying those for 20 years. And then we work really, really hard, and then we go, well, I'm going to go buy a house. But JK, because 27% of single family homes are owned by investors. How is that allowed? Then we have inflation, and inflation is supposed to decrease spend, okay? So inflation rose last year 7%. And if your boss didn't give you a 7% raise, then you actually lost money. The American dream, as we were told from when we were kids, is dead. And now we're building our idea of what the American dream is. And I can assure you, it's not working our lives away until one day we maybe retire and can enjoy our lives. Making rich people richer is not what gets us going anymore.
Listen, if you still want to come to America because you believe in the American dream, let me tell you something. That dream died like 30 plus years ago, and now we're living in a dream that involves paying $10 for a dozen of shitty fucking eggs, paying $2,000 a month for an apartment in the ghetto that's about 700 square feet and it has no walls. And then if you want to go to university here, you're looking at around $100,000 for a 4-year education. That's on the low end. But in those 4 years, you might get shot because everyone seems to want to shoot each other for some ungodly reason. Then you're going to graduate thinking, oh, I graduated, I have a degree now, I'm going to get a good job. Your good job is going to pay you about $40,000 starting off, maybe, and then they're going to say you're going to work 40 hours a week, when in reality you're going to be working about 50 plus hours a week because they're going to guilt trip you in by saying, we're a family, we're a team, we help each other. And they're not going to pay you overtime for that, because why would they? If they get your help for free, why would they pay you for that, okay? Then there's no work-life balance. That company you're working for now doesn't want to give you vacation days until like maybe your second year working there, and those vacation days are maybe 4 days out of the whole entire year. That includes holidays, all right? Then if you're sick, too bad, you still have to come to work, okay? Then if you want to buy groceries, your groceries are going to be your whole entire paycheck because no one can afford to eat here anymore. God, I go to the grocery store for 4 things, it's like 50 bucks. I'm just saying it sucks living here. I don't want to live here. I want to leave. So maybe you should rethink your whole American dream, because it's not what it's all cracked up to be. Okay? Okay, love you, bye.
Get the house, have the kids, you know, the American dream.
Go watch that video. Essentially, she's quitting her job in 45 days. She got a master's degree in engineering, and she went into corporate America, and she realized she hated it. And the hardest part was figuring out how to go against what her parents have told her is the ideal life for her whole life. The American dream, quote unquote. Buy a house, get married, maybe you're supposed to get married first, have 3.5 kids and a white picket fence. Except that what we've been screaming from the rooftops is that the American dream is dead. No one can afford to buy a house. The cost of housing and minimum wage have not risen at the same rate by any means. And it's really funny because when, you know, I do van life, and when I tell people that, they often look at me with, you know, some aspect of judgment, and they're like, why? Why? And first of all, I can control my expenses. Rent is incredibly expensive. Mortgage is incredibly expensive. Also, I can go be and exist and like live in all of these different places and see all these different things and meet all these different people. But the real reason that I did it was that I knew I wanted to step away from corporate America. And the first thing I needed to do was downsize my expenses. And the only way that I could do that was to get a renter for my townhouse and save on mortgage. Once I did that, I'm like, okay, well, I don't have anywhere to live, and I don't want to live in LA. I have always been a free spirit, and I've always been okay spending time alone. That the caveat there is you heavily need to be okay spending time alone. And this has been the best experience of my life. But I was thinking, like, what was I missing in corporate America? Because the drive to succeed and the drive to climb the ladder kept me going for so long. I have 13 years of experience, and I got this job. It was a very high up level job. It was a VP job, and it absolutely destroyed me. I was discriminated against for being a woman. I was talked down to. I was made fun of. I watched them make racist jokes that I would say absolutely not. Feminist jokes, misogyny, I mean, everything. And, I was the only woman in a leadership position, and the psychological warfare alone, it was a horrible, horrible experience. And that was really the reason that I looked around and I said, what the fuck am I doing this for? Like, no, honestly, what am I doing this for? Like, yes, a goal was to do it so I can get to the top, so I can change the environment. But when I was working under these 3 C-suites that are men in their 50s, white males, I realized that people just blindly believed anything that they said. I mean, they have talked so much crap about me after leaving this company. They went on to say I wasn't a cultural fit, which is fine because that's the lie that I was saying. And that they wish the best for me. That was in public, but in private, because I still had friends that worked at the company, they would talk so much shit about me and say I was dumb and I was stupid and I lied and all these things. And, I think what was crazy was realizing that people just blindly believed them. Like, everyone just blindly believed them. No one sought to understand my side of the story or the fact that they could have discriminated against me just for being a female. And that was when I realized, not the first time, but maybe the 100th time, that the game is rigged. This is not apples to apples. And I'm fucking tired.
Say goodbye to the American dream, boys and girls, because homes have never been this overpriced or impossible to buy. In 1920, a new house would have cost $6,296, just $95,000 today. The average American's annual income that year was $3,269, roughly under $50K, meaning that back then, a house was only 2 years' annual salary. All the amenities that we have today were much cheaper back then, like broadband, internet, lighting, roofing, indoor plumbing, a concrete foundation. All of those things were dirt cheap. And back in 1920, 46% of all Americans owned a home. Compare that to today's figure of 66%. Let's do a basic freaking common sense rundown of why American homes are so much cheaper compared to how they were in 1920. Right now, the average cost of an American home is about $392,000, and that is fairly high. But American homes today are 2 to 3 times larger than they were in 1920. Homes back then averaged between 742 to 1,200 square feet. And the average home right now is 2,464. Now let's go into square footage costs. The average cost per square foot of an American home is around $200. In 1920, it was about $3.85. So that's $60 in today's money. Let's talk about the features of an American home from 1920 to today. I'm going to go over every feature in an American home that you take for granted today that would have been a luxury in 1920, and I'm going to show you the cost differences. Back then, only 35% of American households had electricity. About 20% of Americans had indoor plumbing, meaning running hot water. At that time, only 1% of all US homes had electricity and indoor plumbing. It also meant that 80% of American households did not have indoor flush toilets. What about basic HVAC systems like air conditioning and central heating? Less than 1% of American households had central heating and air conditioning. They just had coal or wood to heat themselves in the winter, and then they just had windows to cool themselves off back in the day. While the air conditioner was invented in 1902, back in 1920, it cost about $10,000 to install one, which means it was worth as much as an American home. Because most American homes back in the day did not have any kind of insulation, and heating was always a big deal. The houses were much more closed off and compartmentalized instead of the modern day open floor plan, which most American households have. What about basic kitchen appliances that y'all take for granted, like the microwave, the dishwasher, the gas-powered stove or oven, or a kitchen sink? The microwave didn't exist then until 1950. The remaining three were luxury items, meaning the average American couldn't afford them. Let's not forget the refrigerator, because having something electric run like this back then cost about $1,000, which is 10% of the value of the home. What about driveways and garages? Those just started appearing in the 1920s. Back then, there was no such thing as the internet. Closest thing we had was a telephone, and only 30% of Americans had that. What about concrete foundations, which make up the vast majority of American homes and keep them so sturdy? Oh, what do you know? Less than 10% of American homes had concrete foundations back in 1920. What about having a roof over your head that didn't leak every day, which was a luxury back in 1920. They had minimal insulation and ventilation considerations, and generally were made of tar paper or felt. This is a cost breakdown of all the features in an American home today from the National Association of Home Builders, also called the NAHB. I calculated how much each luxury cost in 1920 as a price per square foot. Now, the microwave wasn't invented until the 1950s, but I'm going to say that's $1 per square foot, and I'm being generous. If you add up all of these amenities, you have $32.85 per square foot. And then there's the markup. You sell the house at a profit. Let's be conservative and say it's 10%. All right, that's $36.13. Add that to the average price per square foot of the house in 1920, which was $3.87, and you have $40 per square foot of American property in 1920. $40 in 1920 is $627.10 today. Multiply that number by the average amount of square feet in an American home, 2,464. You got $1,545,174.40 is how much it would have cost to build an American home with today's standards back in 1920. While home prices have elevated above the historical norm, we are living in the equivalent of a high luxury mansion compared to how people were living in 1920. And remember, while the average American home in 1920 was a crap shack compared to what we have today, only 46% of Americans owned it. My name is the GOP Son, and if you think we were living better in 1920 than we are today, shut up. You don't know anything. Read a book. Look at some stats and charts.
One thing that I like to say, people are getting to know the truth, and the fact that these inflation or these what is happening in the United States today, or what especially the white is eating the white America, because I'll definitely say the white folks are used to this. This is something that it's not new to them. This is something that they have experienced firsthand, working out of scratch to obtain wealth. Now for the white folks, the wealth that they took from, some white folks who took this wealth. I know we have people who work hard generally to gather a lot of money for themselves, but I'm talking about those people, especially the white America, people who received these goods from their grandfathers, their fathers, and they didn't utilize this. They didn't put it into work because they knew I have a lot to inherit. And so when the inflation hits, it dawns to them that, oh, I'm paying much than I used to pay. Our fathers didn't pay like this. Our mothers didn't pay like this. For you to adapt with that, you need to put the assets into work, and that's what they are not doing. And what I'm saying for the black folks, they've worked for 400 years offering labor without being credited for that, without being given a good part for that, has left American blacks with something to catch up with. And for the longest time, they have always catched up with this. And now me, I'll just tell you, welcome to the black American world, because this is something that they go through on a daily basis. So if this happens for you for the first time, that's when you want to come out and try to complain about it. It's happening to them, folks. Yes, it's happening to them. The statutory ways that they can come and understand that the only way to survive, it's not now being as a slave. They used to say that, oh, I can't work 9 to 5. I can inherit from my parents. I can do anything. But now they realize that they also gotta take 3 to 4 jobs in order to make both ends meet, because the rise of products, that's generally inflation, is what is happening to these people. American blacks have been dealing with this thing for the longest time. Now they're not surprised. And now to you, it looks like something big is really happening in your life. And you want to say how everyone now is a slave. Yet black people have been embracing, black people have been working so hard for the longest time. Black people have been trying to make both ends meet for the longest time. And they have worked so hard, and this is a true story, that when you put a black folk and a white folk on the same scenario, you'll see them complaining so much. The white folks, you'll see them complaining so much because the subjugation to what they are subjected to, they are not used to that. So when they're not used to that, it means that they're trying to kind of feel like, okay, this is happening to us. I know housing system is so crazy in the United States. And that's how it's different with here in Africa, 300,000 USD, somebody can do a lot of things with them, while in Africa, a tenth of it can get you, hours that really make sense, basic hours that you can store your things, you can have a room for your sleep. But $3,000 in the United States is something that you are not guaranteed to get a house with it. So, and this is what the black folks have been dealing with for the longest time. So welcome to the black world. And you also gotta just find ways of coping up with this, because the inflation is not just stopping anyway soon. The inflation will be going on for the longest time. So you just need to find a way of trying to catch up with this. You gotta work, maybe if you're working 2 times, you gotta work 4 times to achieve this, you know what I'm saying? So I hope this video finds you well. I couldn't explain much because black folks have always been talking about this and people think that it's a joke. It ain't. It's crazy that now it's happening, and now it's when the world knows. Now it's when people are trying to get out there to trying to confirm this, that it's really hectic, and they're running crazy and they're going nuts because this is happening. You gotta find a way of dealing with this. Your fellow black people have been dealing with this for the longest time. Yep. As I said earlier, the only way to catch up with this is to find ways of increasing your earnings, cut down cost as much as possible. I'm not economic advisor, but I also know that we also have black folks who are going through this, and we gotta talk to anybody, and maybe it will help. You never know, just maybe. So tell me what you think about this in the comment section. I really want to know, what do you think about this? What's the struggle as a black person? What's the struggle as a white person? What are you struggling with this? I hope to see you in my next video. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.